Kenny Washington's solos always just make sense and sound perfect, and your solos feel like they're the same ideas over and over again. Now, both use repetition, so what's the difference between these two? To figure this out, we're going to be checking out some transcriptions that I did of Kenny Washington's real solos so that you can use repetition to dial in your phrasing. And if you're getting lost in the form on your solos, I'm going to give you an exercise at the end inspired by K-Wash that's going to make it so that you stop getting lost in the form forever. So I was recently transcribing some Kenny Washington with my students in one of our listening hangs, and the class ended early because we found that Kenny Washington used so much repetition. So we got through these transcriptions pretty fast. But what we realized is this is how he made his solos make sense, is using this repetition. And the first pattern that we noticed was this call and response pattern that he was using in his soloing, just like he does in this phrase. Now, the call and response that he was using is really simple. He would play an idea and then play a response to that idea, right? And then go back to the first idea and then another response, right? And so with that all together, you get this repetition. Right? And it's so simple, but it makes logical sense. Another way that you could think of this form, like call and response, is like A, B, A, C, right? Play something else, play the first thing again, play something else. And that's like a form that you would see in a tune like Just Friends or like Days of Wine and Roses. That's why it makes so much sense. And Kenny, he's probably not thinking A, B, A, C. We're just doing this so that we can understand and add some repetition to our solos and make sense of them. But that internal logic, it just makes the solos make sense. That way you don't get lost. And we notice that this makes soloing so much easier because you only have to have a couple ideas and you can get a lot of mileage out of them when you put them in a way that makes sense. But this was only in a trading fours. So we kept transcribing and we checked out what he did in some longer solos like a trading 8. When we checked out this phrase, we noticed there's a similar pattern, right? There's kind of a call and response thing going on in the first couple bars, right? The call, right? The repeated part is this, right? So he plays. Right? So you can hear something, something else, right? Creating form. And then in the 5th and 6th bar, he plays this idea, right? Goes to something else, and then he comes back to this call and response idea. Right? Super, super logical. Now you see, since it's 8 bars instead of 4, there's kind of a bigger form, right? It goes call, response, something else for a couple bars, and then call and response. So it's kind of like he's going A, B, A with the call and response in between it, right? And stacking together phrases like this is how you get longer ideas. Right? You can hear the logic in that. It's kind of like this repetitive melody, just like you would hear a repetitive melody in a song. It creates the logic, the expectation that makes all your ideas make sense. And this is how you start to build phrasing in your solos. But Kenny Washington, he doesn't just do it the same way every single time. That would start to get repetitive in its own way, right? He has more than one way to take an 8-bar phrase and break it up in a way that makes sense. So let's check out the next idea where he breaks up an 8-bar phrase in another different form. Now this idea, I noticed it had a longer call, right? It had a 2-bar phrase and then something else. And then that 2-bar phrase repeated again and then something else. So it's a similar like A, B, A, C kind of form, but this time with 2-bar chunks instead of 1-bar chunks, right? So the call or the A would be this thing, right? And then the response plays something else. And then back to the call, right? And the response, okay? So with all of that, you can hear the repetition. That's what creates the logic, and also makes it so that he doesn't have to have so many ideas. He doesn't have to be an endless stream of. Like, that has its place. You'll hear Kenny Washington, you'll hear Hutchinson, you'll hear all sorts of people do that in some part, but they all have this muscle where they can use repetition to create form, to create phrasing. It makes it so you don't get lost and you get more mileage out of your ideas. And this is when it all started to come together. If you use repetition in your solos like Kenny Washington, one, you don't have to have so many ideas. You can get more mileage out of the ideas that you do have. And two, is that all your ideas make sense because you build them with this logic, this kind of sentence structure that makes it make sense. And that's when me and my students, when we figured this out, we created an exercise that made it so that they just don't get lost in the form anymore. Now, before we jump into that, if you're watching this and you're like, this is going way too fast, how did you transcribe this? I don't get how this form works. These ideas, I can't even read them. You know, there's a lot of things that I don't understand. I can't cover everything in this video, but those are things that I work on with my students. We work on how to transcribe, how to build up your phrasing, how to learn tunes, all the technique you need to play these tricky Kenny Washington ideas, and then how to put it all together and go play jazz with people. So if you want to work more closely with me to dial in all those things, so you can maybe start going to some jams or get some gigs, click the link in the description. You can reach out. We can hop on a call, see if it's a good fit for us to work together, and we'll get started. Now, every example that we checked out so far, it was like a 4 or an 8 bar phrase. And you could see how he got a lot of mileage out of his ideas. He was really flexible. But where it really started to blow our mind is when we saw how he would navigate through a whole chorus. So let's check out a 12 bar blues solo that he plays, that it has the entire chorus mapped out with this kind of repetition. So in this example, he really brings everything together, right? So he starts the first 8 bars with this call and response thing. So the call is this. The response, call again, response, call again, response. All right, call one more time, response. All right, so the whole first 8 bars, you get this. Right? You can hear the structure in that. It's almost like the chorus of a song that keeps repeating and keeps coming back. You can find yourself in that solo. You can hear him working out the one idea, okay? The last 4 bars, because that was 8, we need 4 more for a 12 bar blues. He plays something different, right? There's no call or response here. It's just something completely different. Right? So if you look at this whole form, it's kind of like first 4 bars, call and response, right? Second 4 bars, call and response again, right? So that's kind of like A, okay? And then the last 4 bars, something completely different, not call and response. So that's a B, right? So the big picture form is A, B. And this is really how you get good at phrasing, is you have to be able to feel these chunks. You got to be able to feel what a 1 bar call feels like. And you got to feel like what call and response is. Now, I guarantee you, he's not sitting there like, okay, here's the call, here's the response. No, this is just how he plays music. This is just how he hears music, because he listened to Clark Terry, because he listened to Philly Joe Jones, because he listened to Tony Williams and Elvin Jones, and these people who put together ideas with repetition, because that's how you play music, right? So you want to start to build this into your playing. And that's what we're going to talk about next, is an exercise on how to build this into your playing step by step so it just becomes natural. So if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, if I have to play a 12 bar solo and I have to keep track of call and response and AAB, and oh my God, that's too much to juggle. I'm already overthinking when I play. That's not the way to do it. We got to build up these Lego blocks like bit by bit, okay? So the first thing is to just get used to the basic form of a call and response. An A, B, A, C. Play something else, play the first thing again, and then play something else. So something like this. Right? There you go. I played something and I came back to it. Let's do another one. right? You can hear it. There's logic there. Let's do another one. You know, that goes very quickly. So you want to get to the point. The challenge with that is remembering what you played, like in the spur of the moment, and try to play as close as you can to the exact same thing, because you'll build that memory. It'll become just automatic, just like it is for Kenny Washington. Okay, so that'll get you through 4-bar solos, like trading fours. But if you need to play a longer solo, like trading eights, right, then you just take that call and response and just do it twice, right? So I'm going to even use different calls for the second time around. So I can do something like this. All right? Simple. You can hear the call and the response, and I just did it twice. Let's do another one. All right? So that time, I still did the call and response and everything, but I flipped it a little bit. When you're doing this, you don't have to be perfectly exact, right? Once you get better with this, it's like, I played this the first time. The second time I played this. Right? It's still the same idea, just orchestrated slightly differently. The important thing is that you can hear the logic, okay? After you can do those 8-bar chunks, try doing a full 12-bar solo, like K-Wash did, where you do A, both of those are call and response, right? And then B, which can be just whatever you want for 4 bars, all right? Let's give it a go. All right, there you go, 12 bars. Let's do another one. One more. This is how you internalize phrasing, by training your ear to hear it and feel it as you solo, building it brick by brick, just like Legos. So if you found this video interesting, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel and check out my video here on how Greg Hutchinson uses rudiments in his solos. See you next time.